Welcome to Congressman Chris Deluzio's telephone town hall focused on the ongoing federal government shutdown. This event is a chance for you to share your thoughts with Congressman Deluzio, and we do thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. My name is Robin, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's telephone town hall, which is scheduled from 5 to 6 p.m. Congressman Deluzio is a Navy and Iraq War veteran. He's worked on voting rights and cybersecurity as a lawyer and organized a union with the steelworkers. And now he proudly represents Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District, and of course, all of you. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes, but I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you that this is a live, interactive event, and it's all about giving you, Congressman Deluzio's constituents, the chance to ask the Congressman questions about the issues that you care most about. To ask a question this evening, you can press *3 on your telephone keypad. That's *3 on your telephone keypad to ask a question at any time during the call. If you happen to be streaming this event online, please type your name and question below the streaming player. We realize that we can't get to all of the questions this evening, but we will get to as many as we can. After pressing *3, you'll speak with a member of our staff. That staff member will record your name, your hometown, and your question to put it into the queue for the Congressman to answer. Again, you can submit your questions by pressing *3 and speak with a staff member and leave your question for the Congressman. Tonight's event is focused on the ongoing government shutdown. Congressman Deluzio will primarily take questions related to the shutdown, but will take questions on other topics if time allows. Welcome, everyone who's just joining us. You're here at the beginning of Congressman Chris Deluzio's interactive telephone town hall on the ongoing federal government shutdown, and we'll get started very soon. Along with asking questions this evening, you can subscribe to Representative Deluzio's e-newsletter by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Again, that's *6 to leave an email and get subscribed. You may also subscribe to the Congressman's newsletter online at deluzio.house.gov. Again, we're very glad to have you join us this evening for the Congressman's telephone town hall. We're going to give people a few more minutes to join the call with Congressman Deluzio's office. For those of you just joining, if you'd like to ask the Congressman a question this evening, please press *3 to submit your question. That's *3 to ask a question this evening. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is an interactive call, so Congressman Deluzio would like to kick the call off with a poll question to better understand who's joining us this evening. Please use the keypad on your telephone to answer the following poll question. Are you worried about the ongoing federal government shutdown? Press 1 for yes, I am worried. Press 2 for no, I am not worried. Again, use your telephone keypad to answer the following question, if you will. The question is, are you worried about the ongoing federal government shutdown? Please press 1 for yes, I'm worried. Press 2 for no, I am not worried. We thank you all for participating in this poll question on Congressman Deluzio's telephone town hall. And we will share the results of the poll question after we take some of your questions. So please keep submitting your questions by pressing *3. Participants streaming the event online at deluzio.house.gov/live can type their question below the streaming player. This event is focused on the ongoing government shutdown. Congressman Deluzio will primarily take questions related to that topic, but will also take questions on other topics if time allows. While it is not possible to get to everyone's question this evening, we will get to as many as possible, so please stay on the line to hear if your question is answered. You can listen to the audio stream of this event on Congressman Deluzio's Facebook page or at deluzio.house.gov/live. And now, without further delay, I'd like to invite Congressman Chris Deluzio to give some of his opening remarks. Congressman, the floor is yours, sir. Please go ahead.
You bet. Thanks, Robin. Hi, everybody. I just got back to Washington yesterday, and I was here 2 weeks ago as Washington Republicans, who have full control of the House and the Senate and the White House, first shut down the government. And like then, I'm here now to try to work to hash out a deal, bipartisan deal it'll have to be, to reopen the government and stop healthcare costs from skyrocketing as they are. Tonight, I want to hear from you, hear your questions about the shutdown. I want to share some updates on how I'm working to serve and represent all of us. And it looks like we got a lot of folks on. Just got a note from my team. More than 3,500 people are on. That's awesome. Thank you for taking the time tonight to join. So I hope some of you or many of you know who I am. I'll tell you briefly a little bit about me. I grew up in our district in Thornburg in Allegheny County. I'm a proud alum of Ingram Elementary and Canavan for high school, where I was a senior when the 9/11 attacks happened. And from there, went off to the Naval Academy to serve. My time in uniform took me to a bunch of deployments, including at sea and on the ground in Iraq. And I'm now very proud to be a dad to four, a husband, raising our family right here at home. My time, in the military, of course, also then took me other places. I became a lawyer. I worked on voting and cybersecurity issues at Pitt. I worked to organize a union with the steelworkers. And since I was first elected to this job in 2022, it's been a great honor, the honor of my life to serve and represent all of us, representing Western Pennsylvania in Washington in Congress. And with that, let's get to what we're here to talk about, this government shutdown. I want to give a quick recap of how we got here. Now, I serve in the House. My Republican counterparts, they have full control of our government, the House, the Senate, the White House. So two big factors that got us to here where we are. Number one, those Republicans in leadership used that control over the summer to jam through their big ugly bill or big beautiful bill, depending on your perspective, with only Republican votes, so a partisan bill. And that bill made cuts to health care for millions of Americans, including tens of thousands, right here in Western Pennsylvania. Programs like Medicaid, for instance. Number two, when the Republican leaders advanced and pushed that bill through, they did nothing to extend health care tax credits that are about to expire. These tax credits, they keep down monthly health insurance bills for millions of Americans, including thousands of people in Western Pennsylvania. And if the Congress doesn't act to extend those tax credits right now, very soon, we will see health care costs go up even more than they already have been. And I want to give just a few examples of what will happen, some real numbers of how it will affect people in our part of the world if these tax credits aren't extended by Congress. So take a 60-year-old couple living in our district, making around $80,000 a year for the household. That's about the household average around our part of Pennsylvania. So when they go to buy health care on Penny, that's the ACA or Obamacare exchange or the market, they will see their premiums go up $12,000 for the year. That is a lot of money. I cannot imagine many households can stomach a $12,000 per year increase in their health insurance premiums. Give you another example. A family of four, 2 adults, 2 children, making around $64,000 a year will see their annual premiums go up by 344%. That's thousands of dollars. I think that's nuts. That is putting major pressure on a lot of families and a lot of people in their budgets. And just to talk averages, for people who use Penny, again, that's the ACA exchange, if you aren't familiar with it, the Affordable Care Act exchange, they're looking to see a 74% increase if they're in Beaver County, 75% increase in Allegheny County. That's about $130 coming out of your pocket every month if these tax credits aren't extended, which they should be. That's a huge blow to people. That's on top of rising costs that we're seeing around utility bills, housing, groceries. I go on and on. It is why I'm fighting hard for action to bring down these healthcare costs. And that brings us to the number 3 thing. Government funding ran out for nearly all of the government, not all of it, and there was a government shutdown on October 1st. And a big part of why is my Republican counterparts did not want to negotiate with the other party. They wanted to shut the government down instead of working with Democrats to work out a deal, to make a deal that takes action on these health care costs and funds the government responsibly. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, even canceled votes in the days leading up to the shutdown, sent members home, and the House hasn't been in session since September 19th. So that's how we got in, and we're 15 days into the shutdown. I'm in Washington right now ready to work, ready to reopen the government, ready to do something to bring down healthcare costs. I think the stakes of this government shutdown are very high. People are already hurting, and I fear it could get worse, especially as folks may miss paychecks. And just got news even today, a court blocked the administration's attempt to illegally fire thousands of federal workers. Now, I want to talk a little more, and we will, I'm sure, talk about the impacts of the shutdown before we dig into your questions, but I have someone on. I want to welcome Kimberly Cranack-Lambert, who's got 16 years at the TSA under her belt and now represents a lot of our local TSA workers through the American Federation of Government Employees. She's going to share how this shutdown is affecting federal workers like those TSA agents and union members that she represents in Western Pennsylvania. So, Kimberly, if you would, please unmute. I'll hand it over to you for a few minutes. Tell us what you're hearing.
Thank you, Congressman Deluzio. I appreciate you having us, and I appreciate all the work that you do for us. I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, since January, federal employees have seemed to have been public enemy number one and our union for some reason, and it's very upsetting to everybody, and it's been very stressful, and it has been very traumatic, which I think was the objective for federal employees. And everybody needs to remember these federal employees are just average Americans that want to serve the American people, and a third of them are veterans. So this is hitting them pretty hard. I know this week most of the folks, 80% of the folks out of the 66,000 approximately federal employees in Pennsylvania are working without a paycheck. TSA is one of them. And TSA, most of the folks that got their paycheck this week, it was a partial paycheck, which is not very helpful and it's very stressful. People are worried about paying for daycare. They're worried about gas. They're worried about food, car payments, elderly parents, special needs family members. And we just need people to open up the government, and I appreciate what you're doing for health care because the health care rates have come out and they are extremely high. The sad thing is the government's supposed to set the example for federal employees, and unfortunately they're playing games with people's lives, and it's very unfair and it's very stressful, and our folks need to do the job that they've taken an oath to protect the American people and do the work that they do. So that's basically all I have, unless somebody has a question or you want me to elaborate anymore.
Kimberly, thanks. I'm sure we got some questions coming up. So, Robin, I'll flip it back to you. But, Kimberly, thanks so much for sharing what you're hearing and what you and your members are feeling right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Congressman Deluzio. We're going to get started with the first question of the telephone town hall about ongoing federal government shutdown in just a moment. Before we get into it, I just want to remind folks, you can submit your questions by pressing *3 on your telephone keypad now or at any time during the call. In addition to asking a question, you can also subscribe to Congressman's weekly email newsletter by pressing *6. We're so glad you're joining us this evening for the Congressman's telephone town hall. And we'd like to share the poll results and thank you for participating. We asked you, are you worried about the ongoing federal government shutdown? 84% of you chose 1 in response to yes, I am worried, and 16% of you chose no, I am not worried. And with that, we're going to take our first question, Congressman. Our first question comes from George from Moon, and George asks, how will this shutdown hurt or impact the way things work at the airport?
George, thanks, and you're nearby the airport there. And let me start with a basic point. I hope folks understand this and get it. It is safe to fly. I mean, I flew yesterday. I regularly fly to and from Washington. It is safe to fly. Let me also say something else. There are delays happening. There are, I think, 15,000 or so delays of flights in the last week. And many of the workers keeping our airports and skies safe and keeping the planes flying are working without pay or without full pay right now. You heard Kimberly talk a little bit about that. TSA agents, air traffic controllers, air safety techs, so many are already asked to work long hours and high-pressure jobs, and now they're being asked to show up to work to serve the public without pay. I in fact, heard a briefing today on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee where I serve from the air traffic controllers about exactly what they're seeing and some of the impacts that we may see if this continues, and it's not going to be good. It's really going to put a stress on air travel in this country. You heard from Kimberly about what the impact is on TSA workers and their paychecks. Air traffic controllers already received only a partial paycheck this month, and if the next payday comes up in a couple of weeks, they will miss that pay. And so this is really hitting people right now. And so the staffing on the air traffic controller side especially is already very thin. It doesn't take many folks getting sick or having some family emergency to really affect air travel. And I think some dangerous stuff I heard, or stuff I don't think is productive, the Transportation Secretary, Mr. Duffy, threatened to fire air traffic controllers if they happen to get sick or call out sick amidst all of this. I think they've earned, I think folks who are working in this certainly have earned their pay. I'm doing everything I can to make sure they get their back pay when this government shutdown reopens. But Kimberly, do you want to come on and tell us a little bit about the impact? I know you talked about what the shutdown looks like for TSA agents you represent, but how, if this continues, might it affect their ability to do their jobs at Pittsburgh International Airport, and what we might see as folks are traveling through?
Absolutely. I would just request that everybody have a little bit of patience, because like we're saying, that they are not getting paid and they are very stressed out, but they are focused on the job that they do. And despite whatever is going around and what politics are happening around them, they do their job to protect the American people. So rest assured that flying is safe. But just be nice to them. And if however long this goes on, it's going to get difficult for folks because they have to pay for gas to get to work. They have to pay for food. I know that Pittsburgh International Airport is feeding our TSA officers twice a week. They're coordinating with the vendors at the airport, which we so appreciate. But everything's going to be okay, but there might be some delays, and it might be from air traffic controller or TSA when somebody's sick, their family's sick, the kids are sick, something's going on, or they have no gas to get to work. And they are also getting threatened about not coming in or having to work mandatory overtime with no pay. Imagine that. So it's very stressful for everybody. Just pack your patience, please.
Kimberly, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Congressman. Congressman, we've got a two-part question for you, sir. Josephine from O'Hara asks, I keep hearing this whole shutdown is about health care, but isn't it about funding the government? And the follow-on to that is Kevin from Beaver asks, Republicans say that everything should be resolved after the shutdown. Why?
Well, to answer the first question, I think from O'Hara, I think the shutdown is about funding the government and about this healthcare crisis, which I call it a crisis, because folks are already getting and are about to start getting notices about premium increases. Those numbers I cited from Penny, we've got those within the last week or so. This is happening in real time. Open enrollment will start very soon for people. The time to act is right now. We should have had the Congress take action on these healthcare premiums months ago. And so, yes, this is about funding the government. It's also about doing something to fix this healthcare crisis. That's what I'm in Washington right now ready to do. I talked about earlier that Republican big beautiful bill or big ugly bill. Again, you may name it different things on your perspective, but I think it's a bad bill. And the Medicaid cuts, hundreds of billions of dollars, that means millions of people will lose their health care. In fact, the bill is so unpopular, I've got Republican politicians in Washington, D.C. now trying to call it a different name because they know it's not popular. And they did this, remember, health care cuts, to pay for tax giveaways to corporations and some of the richest people who have ever existed in human history. I don't like to make everything a big partisan fight, but I should be clear that the Republicans I serve with have full control, the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate, the White House, and they are refusing to negotiate with Democrats like me who want to work out a deal to fund our government and want to do something about these out-of-control healthcare costs. The healthcare crisis, frankly, that they have made worse. And so I think that refusal to negotiate with guys like me is how we are in a shutdown. And I've talked a lot on this call about healthcare costs being way too high. And yet if we don't extend those tax credits I talked about for the Affordable Care Act, premiums are going to go up even more for so many. The average, we've gotten data from Penny, again, the exchange in Pennsylvania, across the state is 102% on average. Some rural counties are seeing increases 3-4 times that. So we're seeing real increases for healthcare costs that are already very expensive for people. And think about what happens. If families or people lose health coverage because they can't afford it, they're going to stop getting preventative care. They're going to stop going to the doctor for something that will cost them an arm and a leg, and maybe they wait on something that could have stopped some injury or some illness earlier, and they end up in an emergency room. That means that those costs are even more expensive, that the private insurance plans you might have through an employer or otherwise are going to pick up those bills, and it's going to lead to healthcare costs going up for everybody. And so, again, I am in Washington with my Democratic colleagues ready to negotiate a deal to get the government open. I think it's outrageous that Speaker Mike Johnson has had Republican members out of town for weeks, that there are no votes for us this week. We should be working to get it open. I asked in a survey to all of us here in Western Pennsylvania, should the Speaker bring the U.S. House back so we can vote to reopen the government? We got more than 1,300 people who responded. The results were pretty clear. More than 93% say they want the Speaker to bring the U.S. House back to session to vote to reopen the government. And that poll is still open. If you want to chime in, please. You can find it on my social media accounts. And so I think this is about fighting to bring down healthcare costs. It is about funding our government responsibly. And I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep working to do that. Whether that's at home or in Washington, I think we got to get the government funded. We got to get action on healthcare costs.
Thank you, Congressman. We've got a question from Lucy from Rochester, and Lucy asks, how come you and your staff still get paid during a shutdown when our troops and federal workers don't?
Well, Lucy, I'm not taking a paycheck during the shutdown of federal workers, and our troops and others are not getting paid, period. I think it's outrageous that's the case for some people. I'm not taking my pay while we're shut down and federal workers aren't taking pay, and my staff is in the same position. I'm asking them to work because they provide essential services and constituent casework that we need. They're showing up to work. They're not getting paid during the shutdown, but I've asked them to still show up to work for the people of Western Pennsylvania. I think that's what you expect of me. That's what you expect of my team. I don't think it's that complicated. It's basic public service for me. But I don't think, and look, I don't think it's right for federal workers to have to show up to work and not get paid. And, my offices are going to stay open. I've got offices, if you don't know, in Center Township in Beaver County, in Carnegie, and in Penn Hills. My Washington, D.C. office is going to stay open as best we can. I will say this, some of the services, especially the casework or constituent services that my team provides, they might be affected because of the shutdown and how other government agencies are making decisions about federal workers that they might furlough. But my team is in the office. We're going to be working. We're going to be doing everything we can to help folks. I'll put a plug in for my office numbers for anyone who wants them. They're on the website as well, but here's Carnegie, 412-344-5583. Center Township, 724-206-4860. And then Washington, D.C., that's 202-225-2301. Call us with anything we can do to help.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Rosemary, and Rosemary says, I'm a federal employee and I'm trying to retire and want to know if there will be back pay. And she's curious about how long this shutdown will last.
Well, on that question, ma'am, I hope we can get a deal done very soon. I don't have any firm prediction for you, but we got to get the government funded and we got to get action on health care. I'm going to try to do everything I can for my part of this to make sure this government shutdown doesn't last any longer than it shouldn't have started at all. And your first question about will there be back pay, the law is clear. The law is clear that federal workers should get back pay. There's a bill that was passed, or a law that was passed before I was in Congress, I think back in 2019, the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act. In fact, I think President Trump signed it into law in his first term. It guarantees federal workers will receive back pay once a funding package is in place to reopen the government. Now, I know that the Office of Management and Budget, or the OMB as it's been called, under President Trump has called that into question, saying that they may not pay folks. That's outrageous. The law is clear. You've had pushback from both Democratic and Republican members of Congress saying that federal workers should be paid when the shutdown ends. The law is clear on that. I'll keep pushing to make that clear, to do everything I can to make sure that happens. I've pushed and signed letters and bills that will make sure that federal workers are paid. And so this should not be complicated. I'm also a sponsor of a bill. It's the Fair Pay for Federal Contractors Act to make sure that contractors who are providing services also get their back pay. But people doing their jobs, people who are employed right now by the government, they got to get their back pay. That's the law. It is crystal clear.
Thank you so very much, Congressman. And folks, we mentioned earlier in the call that this is an interactive forum this evening. So we'd like to ask our second poll question of you, and we invite you to use your telephone keypad to respond to the poll questions, to answer the poll questions. The question is this: which type of rising costs are you feeling the most? Press 1 for healthcare, 2 for groceries, 3 for utilities like gas, electricity, or water. Press 4 for all of the above, healthcare, groceries, and utilities, and press 5 if there's something other than those things we mentioned. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question for you. We'd like to know, which type of rising costs are you feeling the most? Please press 1 for healthcare, 2 for groceries, 3 for utilities like gas, electric, and water. Press 4 for all of the above, healthcare, groceries, and utilities, and press 5 for other. And now it's time to get back to your questions. We've got Sarah from Ohioville. Sarah asks, Congressman, can you address how in the world we are justifying $20 billion to bail out Argentina?
I think it's outrageous, Sarah. I don't know if folks know what this is about. Let me explain a little bit. President Trump met with Argentina's president, Milei, at the White House, I think this week, yesterday even, talking about providing a $20 billion bailout. And it's to their agriculture industry, essentially, right? This deal is bad for us. It is a gut punch to our American farmers who are really getting hurt because they used to sell so many more soybeans, for instance, to China. And a major competitor of ours is Argentina, who now President Trump, is agreeing to bail out the expense of our farmers. I don't understand this. It seems to be that a bunch of really rich and powerful friends and allies of the Treasury Secretary and others stand to profit from lots of cash because they've invested in Argentinian debt. It's outrageous. Our farmers are really mad about this. I have no explanation for what the heck this president and his team are thinking here, but this is really a gut punch to American farmers who are taking a lot of pain right now because of President Trump's trade wars. And whether you talk to farmers, manufacturers, others, they need certainty. They need certainty when it comes to trade so they can plan on pricing and investments and all the rest. And to throw in this kind of just real gut punch to our farmers is it's really outrageous. And it is I just think it is so against the idea of putting American farmers and workers in industry first. I really disagree with this.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Dan of West Deer. And Dan asks, why are Democrats shutting down the government to give health care to illegal immigrants?
Dan, I got to tell you, that's just not true. It's not that complicated that it is not allowed under federal law for someone who's in this country without lawful authorization, who's not here lawfully, to get benefits from Medicaid, for instance, or the Affordable Care Act. It's just not true. Yet I've seen plenty of politicians down in Washington and otherwise keep peddling this lie. It's not true. It's never been true. And look, I think politicians who are saying that, they want folks to be mad. They want to find a scapegoat instead of paying attention to the fact that you've got right-wing politicians who are doing a lot to try to screw up healthcare in this country. The inaction on these Affordable Care Act tax credits is going to hurt a lot of people. The big beautiful bill or big ugly bill that those same politicians jammed through a few months back is going to take away health care from a lot of people. And a lot of those politicians have spent a decade plus trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And let me be clear about what that means if they succeeded in doing that. Protections for pre-existing conditions means health insurance deny you claims, deny you coverage just because you may have gotten sick in the past. And for anyone who's given birth, that's a pre-existing condition before the Affordable Care Act went into place. And so when these politicians talk about repealing the Affordable Care Act, they are talking about penalizing women who give birth. They are talking about going back to the days where, God forbid, you had a cancer diagnosis and you beat it, that they can deny you coverage because of that. That's what those politicians are talking about. So yes, they'd rather have you fighting and scapegoating immigrants in this country than paying attention to the way they have screwed over our healthcare system. And I think those politicians are dishonest. I think they ought to be ashamed of themselves, and they have no plan to fix healthcare in this country.
Thank you, Congressman. And folks, I want to remind you, if you would like to ask a question this evening, simply press *3 on your telephone keypad. And I quickly want to share the results of the poll question that many of you answered. We asked you, which type of rising costs are you feeling the most? We wanted to let you know that 4% of you said health care, 23% of you said groceries, 11% of you said utilities, gas, electric, water, 59% of you said all of the above, and 3% of you said other. And again, we thank you for your participation. Congressman, next question comes from Elaine of West Deer, and she says, how can we be assured that the government will at all be reopened since Johnson won't even swear in the new Arizona Congresswoman? It feels like democracy is over.
Thanks for the question. I've got more hope and optimism about our democracy. I will tell you, I believe deeply in our system of governing ourselves. We've got to improve a lot of things, but I have confidence that we will succeed as a people who can govern ourselves. And for folks who don't know about what's been going on with this new member of Congress from Arizona, her name's Adelita Grijalva. She won an election in Arizona's, I believe, 7th district. She won her election. There's no question of that. It wasn't close. The results aren't being contested. And in past practice, she would have been sworn in already. And yet Speaker Mike Johnson has refused to swear her in. He is delaying this as long as he possibly can. And I think the very clear reason why is that she would be the final signature on a thing called a discharge petition, which would allow us to start forcing votes to release the Epstein files. And Mike Johnson, who's the speaker, knows that she would be the final signature we would need, and he is delaying this as long as he can. I think it's pretty craven, it's pretty weak, it's pretty cynical to be willing to delay swearing in a new member of Congress, depriving some people in Arizona of a representative in the House, in the U.S. House, because you want to protect who? Pedophiles and abusers of children? I don't understand it. I'm going to continue speaking out that I think it's outrageous and that the people of Arizona ought to have their representative seated. She was in Washington. I saw her yesterday, I believe, and so I know she's ready to get to work. And Mike Johnson is the speaker, ought to seat her, ought to put her, swear her in, and get her able to do the job she was elected to do.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Cassandra from Allegheny County. She asks, what's Plan B if the current Democratic plan doesn't work to lower health care costs?
Well, thanks for the question. And look, I want to be clear. I'm talking about two very urgent things that I think we got to get done. Number one, and most urgently, is to deal with these expiring tax credits, these Affordable Care Act or Obamacare tax credits. Because if Congress doesn't take action here, I've mentioned these numbers a lot, premiums are going to skyrocket, and they already are seeing some of these projections out. It's really going to be very painful for a lot of people, and not just people who buy health care on Penny or the exchanges elsewhere in the country. It'll start to affect shopping for other plans, employer plans, and so we have to have action there. I think we should also repeal the health care cuts from the Republicans' big, beautiful, or big, ugly bill that President Trump signed into law in July. I think reversing those cuts will do a lot to undo some damage that we're seeing may start leading to closures of hospitals and nursing homes and others. But those are just two immediate and more urgent actions. They're Band-Aids in some ways. They're not going to fix the full healthcare system. And look, I've supported legislation to get a Medicare system for people all over this country. I will support whatever I can, whether it's a public option or otherwise. so that we have full health care for all people. I think it can bring down cost. And look, we know in the United States of America, the richest and most powerful country in history, we pay more for health care than any other peer country or country near us, and we don't get better outcomes. It doesn't work. It doesn't work as well as it should. If I asked a poll of who's ever been on the phone with a health insurance company, fighting about a claim, arguing about whether they put the right coding in for some doctor's visit, trying to get somebody on the phone to listen to you, taking time out of your workday to deal with a health insurance company who has every profit incentive in the world to deny you care, to deny you claims, I bet you nearly everyone on this call would say they've had some experience like that. Our healthcare system is not working as well as it should. We have the smartest and best doctors, researchers, and others anywhere in the world. And I know that there are people, nurses, doctors, techs, you name it, who are good and decent people providing care to folks. But our healthcare system has major problems. The profit motive of so many of these insurers to deny care is a huge problem. We pay more for drugs, for instance, in so many other countries when many of those drugs aren't just developed in this country. They are developed with funding from our government. And so I know we got to do better. I am supporting legislation that will do so much more, I think, to get us a better healthcare system. And I just don't want folks to be confused or miss the point that, yes, we got to take action on these Affordable Care Act tax credits. Yes, I think we should reverse the Medicaid cuts from the Republicans' bill, but we got to dream bigger than that.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Gloria, also from Allegheny County, and she asks, can you still apply for the PA license Real ID at your office, and what credentials are needed?
Well, number one, my offices are still open. We're still here to help folks with casework services. That may be something where we've got to refer you over to a state representative or state senator for a state issue, but if you call my office, if you come in, and even if it's not a federal thing we can help you with, we'll get you in touch or give you the info for the state offices. As I said, I've got 3 offices, Carnegie, Center Township, Penn Hills, and then, of course, you can call D.C. I'll plug some of those numbers again. So here's Carnegie, 412-344-5583. Here's Center Township, 724-206-4860. And then down in D.C., 202-225-2301. Don't be shy. Call us. Any federal agency issue, even if it's not, we'll try to get you in touch with some of the state offices who can help you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Carolyn, and Carolyn asks, how will the shutdown affect those on Social Security and SSI and those receiving EBT and SNAP benefits?
Okay, so Social Security payments, including SSI, should and will continue even if the government is shut down. Social Security Administration offices should remain open. If anyone finds or hears of something different to that, please call my office because those offices should be opening and taking calls. But there are some services that we have learned won't be provided by Social Security, the Social Security Administration. They won't be issuing new cards, proof of income letters, updating or fixing an earnings record might be more difficult here. And I also want to highlight Social Security Administration should be issuing their cost of living adjustment, the COLA numbers, later this month for next year, for 2026, though there's some risk that could be delayed if the shutdown continues. As we find out and I find out more information there, I'll make sure we put that information out to people as we learn more. I do think there's a risk. You also asked about SNAP and EBT. I do worry that if the shutdown continues into, say, November, there could be an impact on people receiving those benefits currently. I'm going to continue to ask questions and find out more. Again, I'll try to make sure we share that information as we get more concrete projections on the impact there, too.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And again, folks, there's still time to get into the question, to get into the queue to ask a question. That's *3 on your telephone keypad. And if you're enjoying this update, I encourage you to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter. You can press *6 at any time. And you can also subscribe online at deluzio.house.gov. Congressman, next question comes from Amanda of Oakmont. She says, I'm sick and tired of everyone pointing at each other, saying that it's the other party's fault for shutting down the government. Just take accountability.
Amanda, I am sick and tired of everybody pointing at each other, but I also want to be clear and honest about what I think is happening. I serve in the U.S. House of Representatives. My party, the Democrats, are in the minority in the House. The Republicans have full control, right? The U.S. House, the U.S. Senate, the White House. It is Speaker Mike Johnson, who leads the Republicans in the House, who has made a decision to not have the House even in session to vote. And so again, I'm in Washington, ready to try to work out a bipartisan deal that we'll need to reopen the government to deal with these healthcare costs. And I don't have any Republican counterparts in Washington to even negotiate with. If you've watched any of Speaker Johnson's press appearances or TV interviews, he's made clear he doesn't feel like he needs to negotiate to work out a deal. Now, when I talk to people at home, most people think the government should be open, that we should work out a deal, that we should do something with healthcare costs that are out of control. I agree. That takes the other side to have to negotiate with too. And I just think it's foolish and outrageous that they're not here to negotiate. They don't want to negotiate a deal because people, no matter their political party, are going to be feeling the pain of a government shutdown, especially if this continues for weeks and weeks and folks start missing pay and we see more impact on government services. And again, I wish we could have some deal to make this end, to get the government reopened. I also wish that the big beautiful bill or the big ugly bill wasn't the law. That bill was passed with only Republican votes, so a partisan bill. My Republican counterparts decided to pass that bill without Democrats, to send it to President Trump, who signed it into law. And I think that bill is going to hurt a lot of people in our part of the world. The projection is that there are thousands who will lose health care because of that bill. So I'm not looking to have partisan fights, but I'm also honest about when the parties are doing things without the other one, well, you own the cost and the benefits of that. And when you pass a bill to take away health care from Western Pennsylvanians, that's on you. And I think my Republican counterparts should not have done it. I think that if I'm in a position where my party has the majority in the House, I'm going to try to repeal those cuts and take them away because I think it's foolish and going to hurt a lot of us in Western Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Congressman. And folks, we had such a great response to our poll questions. We have one final poll question for you this evening. And again, please vote using your telephone keypad. Our last poll question is this. Congressman Deluzio is in Washington right now, ready to vote to reopen the government when a compromise proposal comes up for a vote. How do you feel about the Republican Speaker Mike Johnson's decision to cancel votes and send Republican Congress members home to their districts across the country, leading into this government shutdown? Please press 1 if you disagree with the Speaker's action to cancel votes. Press 2 if you agree with the Speaker's action to cancel votes. And press 3 if you are neutral on Speaker Johnson's move to cancel votes. And I know that was a long, wordy question, but let me ask it. I'm going to repeat it for you. Congressman Deluzio is in Washington right now, ready to vote to reopen the government when a compromise proposal comes up for a vote. How do you feel about Republican Speaker Mike Johnson's decision to cancel votes and send Republican Congress members home to their districts across the country, leading into this government shutdown? Press 1 if you disagree with the Speaker's action to cancel votes. Press 2 if you agree with the Speaker's action to cancel votes. Press 3 if you're neutral on Speaker Johnson's move to cancel votes. And again, we appreciate and thank you for your participation. Now we've got Cindy from Ambridge asks, Congressman, she says, you talked about penny and Medicaid prices going up, but I'm also seeing my UPMC prices going up. Are everyone's health insurance prices going up? I think it's going to affect everyone.
It sure seems that way, and I've heard from a lot of people and a lot of employers, and again, we're talking outside of penny and the exchange, where premiums for this coming year seem to be going up. And I think the combination of the Medicaid and other health care cuts from the big beautiful bill or big ugly bill, along with these tax credits expiring, are going to force people out of health care. They're not going to be able to afford it. They'll be kicked out of their health insurance. And so they will forego care, right, because they can't afford it. They can't afford the premiums. They're not going to have health care, and they'll make decisions that no one should have to make, but they'll make decisions to avoid preventative care appointment, to avoid maybe seeing the doctor if they're a little bit sick or there's some condition happening that they could treat or they could care. Maybe they'll ration their medicine because they can't afford it. And I think all of those things lead to a place where more folks are showing up in the emergency room because of something they didn't treat because they were worried about financial ruin. And we know this isn't that complicated, that if there are more people who aren't getting regular and decent health care or showing up in stressing emergency rooms, that will raise costs for everyone. Whether you're getting your health care from an employer, multi-employer plan, whether you're buying it on the exchange, you name it. Those costs will go up because it is much more expensive to treat people in the emergency room than it is to treat folks in other kinds of healthcare settings. And so I think all of these things are combining to lead to higher healthcare costs for everybody. It's part of why I think these urgent tasks of repealing those healthcare cuts from the Republicans' bill, why extending those tax credits are really important, and also why we have to make our healthcare system better. I don't think we can do just one of these things. We should do both. And I think if you ask a small business owner, for instance, what are you seeing as they start to shop around for plans, they'll tell you the same thing. Premiums are getting more expensive. So we've got to get action here. I think this healthcare mess is foolish for there to be an action from Congress. Got to take action now.
Thank you, Congressman. And folks, I just want to share real quickly the poll results with you. We asked you, how do you feel about Republican Mike Johnson's decision to cancel votes and send members back to their districts? And 93% of you responded with you disagree with the Speaker's actions to cancel votes. 4% of you agreed with the Speaker's action to cancel votes, and 3% of you were neutral on the Speaker's action to move to cancel votes. So, and again, we thank you for your participation. Congressman, we've got an online question submitted from Janie from Penn Hills. And Janie asks, is there anything that we, the people, can do to force Speaker Johnson to bring the House back into session?
It's a great question. I mean, look, we're all elected representatives, right? And certainly if you're a decent public servant, you care what your constituents think. I got to think that a lot of people all over the country, not just in Western Pennsylvania, have similar views to what I just heard on that poll. They want the Congress to get to session, to have votes, to work to reopen the government. Make your voice heard is the best way I can say it. And that's the point of a call like this for me, is to hear from folks. And those numbers don't surprise me. People want us to get back to work. I'm sure other members of Congress are hearing the same thing, as they should. So I'll keep delivering that message to whoever I see here in Washington, which unfortunately not enough members, very few Republicans around because they're not in session. And I think, again, that's a bad decision by the Speaker. I think he should change course, get us back into Washington, let's hammer out a deal.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Maria of Shaler, and she says, I have a child with a disability, and I'm deeply concerned with Trump's firing of the DOE staff with special education. What's going on in Congress to reverse these firings?
Thanks, Maria. And in fact, there was a development today to block the Trump administration firing thousands of federal workers illegally. That's why the court blocked it. So just today, a federal judge said that those firings were illegal in a case that was brought by two unions of federal workers, the American Federation of Government Employees. You heard from Kimberly, that's her union. The American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees was also part of that lawsuit. And so there are efforts that are succeeding in the courts where those workers are bringing lawsuits challenging layoffs or firings of federal workers. And it's not just firings. There are also a lot of federal workers who are furloughed right now. Actually more than half of the Defense Department's several 100,000 civilian workers are furloughed. I have these figures for a lot of the government. State Department at 62%. The IRS is almost half. And I worry there, especially, that could affect processing tax returns and getting refunds to folks if, God forbid, we're still in a shutdown when the time comes. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services furloughed half of its workers. It's paused a lot of its oversight work. The National Institutes of Health, NIH, which funds a lot of research and a lot of work in Western Pennsylvania. We're one of the leading parts of the country to receive that important funding. NIH has furloughed about 75%, 3 out of 4 of its workers. And so I'm giving you some of these numbers to give you a sense of it's a lot of people who provide a lot of services, And the longer this drags on, we will really feel the pain of this. And I think in this funding fight, you've also heard from plenty of my colleagues and me who want to do everything we can to make sure there are not these illegal firings. The lawsuits that only those workers can bring are a key part of it. And I'll share one other fact I learned today from having the National Air Traffic Controllers Association in front of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee members who were in town. I mentioned that earlier. What we heard there is a pretty scary thing. There's already very short staffing. The pipeline for new folks it's not a short pipeline because that training is serious. It's a really dangerous, it can be very dangerous if a mistake's made. So that training is serious. And what we heard today was that if this government shutdown continues for a little bit longer, the funding for the training center, the training location, would be shut off, and those students or those trainees would be sent home. And if that happens, the expectation is that many of them won't come back. And so there will be a trickle down, a spillover effect for months and years to come to try to restart to recruit new trainees when we need more folks in the pipeline because this job is so important and difficult and already thinly staffed. And so I'm just giving one example where this can continue to hurt people. And it's beyond preventing firings, which we've got to prevent unlawful or unjust firings, but it's also, my goodness, the hiring that we have to do for something as critical as air traffic controllers could really be hurt and affected by a lengthy shutdown.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you to everyone who's on the line and has submitted a question. We have time this evening for just one more question. We'd like to take Aiden's question. Aiden asks, how do we educate more people about the facts of the shutdown when the current administration continue to lie to the public?
And thank you for the question. Look, I'm going to tell the truth. I'll continue to use the voice I have to do that. I get to talk to the press and the media. I'll continue to do that and to tell the truth and to push back if I see people lying. I hope folks will do the same. I don't want to be alarmist, and even me citing the reality of air traffic controllers and their training is not to scare anyone, but to just be honest and sober about what a shutdown means. I don't think it's reasonable to expect people to continue to work and miss paycheck after paycheck when you're someone who wants to serve the public, you're doing something important. We can't rely on people's patriotism and generosity forever when you're asked to make a decision to show up to work or try to get another job because you want to pay your kids or pay for your kids' medicine or put gas in the tank, pay for rent, pay a medical bill. And those are real choices that federal workers are already starting to have to make, and the longer this goes on, the more they will be faced with those kinds of decisions. And you heard some of that from Kimberly, who speaks to the experience of the TSA agents, who she knows deeply. And again, not to be alarmist or scary, but to just be honest and tell the truth. And I think telling the truth about what's happening is important, especially as there are lies and other stories swirling around. Let's be honest about the facts, and I think the facts are clear. A government shutdown can really hurt this country and really hurt the services and the people who provide those services to the public.
Thank you, Congressman. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of Congressman Deluzio's Social Security and Healthcare Telephone Town Hall, and we'd like to thank everyone for participating and joining us this evening. If you have a question that wasn't answered, or if you need assistance from a federal agency, please go to the contact page on the Congressman's website at deluzio.house.gov. You can also call the Congressman's office at 412-344-5583. Again, that number, 412-344-5583. You can continue to stay in touch with Congressman Deluzio through social media at Rep. Deluzio, or by subscribing to his e-newsletter, which you can sign up on the website. Now I'd like to turn the call back to Congressman Deluzio for his closing remarks and anything else he'd like to add. Congressman?
Robin, thanks, and thanks to everybody who joined me tonight while I'm here in Washington trying to do what I can to get our government back open, to get these healthcare costs under control. It looks like more than 12,000 people joined. That's awesome. Thanks for spending some time with me tonight. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining me earlier in the call and for sharing what you're seeing and experiencing with the TSA folks who I know you will proudly represent. And look, I think we all know we're living in some divided times, and the shutdown is just one example of the costs of dysfunction in Washington. And we may not agree on everything, but I know that what unites us is a heck of a lot stronger than the things that tear us apart. And I think our Western Pennsylvania values that I talk about, hard work, patriotism and sacrifice. That's got to be our North Star as we get through these important arguments and tussles back and forth in Washington about what this country of ours should be. And look, getting the government reopened, top of mind, but I'll also stay focused on fighting corruption, bringing down costs, restoring the American dream for everybody who's working hard and trying to earn their slice of it. As always, and as usual, my team and I are here to serve. If you got an issue with a federal agency, whatever it is you may need help with, give us a call. And I said this earlier, but I want to reiterate it now. Because of the federal shutdown, federal agencies are being slower to respond to my office requests. Capital tours, for instance, are on pause. So there are some impacts, but please still call us in, get the request in. We'll work it as best we can. And even if there's an agency that's not being responsive because of the shutdown, we'll stay on it and make sure we can get in touch with whoever those contacts are when they're back to work. So if you'd like to stay connected, updated my work, you of course can subscribe to the e-newsletter or follow my social media accounts. There's a lot of work to get done, and there are big challenges ahead. Believe me, this shutdown is a major one. Please keep sharing your thoughts and your voices with me. Please keep the faith. You're welcome to call my office, whichever one you can. You can send a message through my website as well. That's deluzio.house.gov. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you at home soon. Have a great night. Thank you.